And on the other side of this regional chess game, Israel's relations with the Gulf states are rapidly evolving based on common interest and mutual enemies. In a new book set to be released in the coming weeks, author Sigurd Neubauer outlines the main ingredients of these relationships. Sigurd, thank you very much for joining me this evening. The title of your book reads Old Struggles, New Alliances. What do you exactly mean by that?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss this issue. I have been researching the Gulf-Israel relationship for the past decade, and what we have seen is that during the Trump presidency, some really old struggles in Arabia have re-emerged. One of them principally is the dynamics between Qatar and its immediate neighbors. And the other struggle that we have seen emerging is tensions over southern Yemen, in which Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates are pressuring up against Oman, which is essentially a repeat of a almost 1950s war between Saudi Arabia and Oman. So that is why I call it old struggles.
Israel, according to your book, is playing quite a role in the Gulf, which mostly is unknown, right?
Yes, I would say that Israel's role in the Gulf is really deviating from the public narrative. And the public narrative is that the Trump presidency provided a new opportunity for the Gulf states and Israel to jointly collaborate against the Iranian threat. And that is certainly the public narrative. The other narrative, which I argue, is that Israel is playing the role of a peacemaker in the Gulf, because Israel's relationship now with the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Oman is very much driven by security and conflicts within the Gulf region. And Israel has, in that role, really played a stabilizing role and maintained the confidence of all parties, even if they are fighting each other.
And what about Saudi Arabia? You've mentioned Oman, Qatar, the UAE, but maybe the key factor, the key player is the Saudi.
The Saudi-Israel relationship, we don't quite know a lot about. There's certainly a lot of speculations in the media about the nature of the Saudi-Israel relationship. I cannot speak with any authority about that relationship because I don't have any significant details about it. But what I can say is that with the United Arab Emirates and Qatar and Oman, the relationships go back over a decade, and it has now become clear that their respective security is tied directly to Israel.
And you are saying that Israel played a critical role in stabilizing the Qatar crisis. In what way?
In several ways. It's important to remember that when the Gulf crisis erupted, most analysts, myself included, thought that it was a repeat, if you will, of an old Arabian struggle. But it became very clear that as the crisis migrated to Washington, where surrogates representing the United Arab Emirates accused Qatar of supporting Hamas and sponsoring terrorism, it became very clear that struggle now had an American component. And during that time, what we saw was that Israel extended Qatar a diplomatic lifeline by allowing the Qataris, if you will, to pronounce that they were cooperating with the Israelis, and in that way playing a constructive role in Gaza. The diplomatic developments at that time was such that Qatar and Israel had not had any diplomatic relations since at least 2013. Yes.
Sigurd, one last question with your permission. Most of those relationships are, under the surface. We don't see them. We very rarely hear of them, but your very good work. Can we expect to see more coming above the surface, like we've seen Prime Minister Netanyahu public visit to Oman? Can we expect more of that?
I think we're already seeing more of that. We have seen that the United Arab Emirates are openly telegraphing their relationship with Israel in recent weeks and months. We have also seen that Qatar, on a consistent basis, continue to provide cash assistance to Palestinians in Gaza through cooperating with the Israelis. And I expect that these dynamics will continue for the foreseeable future, whether or not these are tactical arrangements or whether or not it is actually moving towards establishing formal diplomatic relations, we don't quite know as of yet.
And your book, Old Struggles, New Alliances, will be published on September 1st. Sigurd Neubauer, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.